Hey, it's me, Vicki Marie. And just to look, the dog straight away come up. Um, I'm just doing a little update on Samantha Murphy. Of course, there's not been any news, it feels like, for ages now. Goodness knows how her family feel. And somebody put a comment on. Now, for those of you who don't know, I always have to remember somebody might be watching who doesn't know about Samantha Murphy. And Samantha, of course, was a 51-year-old mother of 3 children who went out for a run on February the 4th, I believe it was, a Sunday morning, and never came back. Now, since then, the police have said they believe she is no longer alive, and they have arrested a young man, a 22-year-old man, Patrick Oren Stevenson, from the local area, which is Ballarat in Australia. He has been arrested, and not only that, he has been charged with her murder. Having said that, he is not cooperating with police. So unfortunately, Samantha's body still has not been discovered. Now you can imagine how this will feel for a family, because it's bad enough that Samantha, that the police have told them that they, in their opinion, Samantha is deceased. That this Patrick, he made a targeted attack on Samantha, and they believe this happened in Mount Clear, not far from her home. And then I think they believe her body was taken from there and hidden somewhere. But this is what's proving difficult, isn't it? To is to find her. Anyway, I had a comment on one of my videos a couple of days ago, well, over the Easter weekend. And somebody who knows the family, and said that over the Easter weekend, so not only were they facing an Easter weekend without their mum, their partner, etc., but it was also Samantha's birthday. So that will have been a very difficult day to get through, wouldn't it? Her birthday, knowing she wasn't there. Not only that, I know it's cold comfort to bring back remains, but it is a comfort, because they need to be able to know for sure, because although the police have told them they think that she is no longer with us, and although they think they've charged this guy Patrick with her murder, they will need they will need some closure of the sense of bringing Samantha back home, giving her a respectful burial. I mean, this boy, this Patrick Stevenson, how disgusting what he's doing. Not only what he's doing to Samantha's family, but what he's doing to his family. Because, well, I hope his family also are pleading with him to release where she is. His mum, his dad, what are they doing? Are they there? I'd be there every day saying, you've got to say where this woman is. You've got to bring this woman back to her family and get some absolution, if you like, or some bloody redemption, either in this life or the next, because your soul is in danger, Patrick Stevenson. What you've done is bad enough, but you know what? I don't know exactly what happened, how you killed Samantha, but at the end of the day, you could get some redemption. You could do something right. You could make it slightly better. So do it, you absolute twonk. Do it. If you won't do it for her and her family, do it for your family. Do it for your soul. It's just beyond me that he's not saying where Samantha is and just leaving her out in the bush like that. And that family, Samantha's family, that just must be, it's just even worse, isn't it? It makes a terrible situation absolutely fucking awful, basically. So anyway, I best not talk about that anymore, because I'll get really angry. As you can tell, I can feel the anger coming up. Let me light the candle. Actually, I haven't lit the candle yet this morning. So every day I've been lighting a candle for Samantha. Hopefully I've been praying that something will give, either he'll say where she is or the police will find her, because there have been doing searches. And that's what we're going to talk about in this sort of update. I mean, it is an update. I try and bring you what news I can about Samantha. But basically, some news that has come out is, well, and it will surprise you, because I think a lot of us, we could not believe that it would take so long to get the phone data. I mean, they must have had some phone data already. That's probably how they arrested Patrick in the first place. But this is on 7 News Australia, and it says detectives have finally been able to assess crucial mobile phone data more than a month after mother of 3 Samantha Murphy vanished without a trace in Victoria. Now, this article is updated today. It says 1st of April, but it was already on there yesterday. So I don't know, they must have just changed the date. But no one has seen or heard from the 51-year-old since she left her Ballarat home for a run on Sunday, February the 4th. But major progress in the investigation this week could now lead to a breakthrough. Let's hope so. I mean, I don't know. The police are keeping everyone in the dark, including Sam's family, I think, because they're trying to keep a lid on the investigation. This is now, well, it was always an active investigation in one way, but there's a court case coming up in August. This case will be going to court, so they won't want to prejudice that, will they? So on Sunday, detectives received new data showing all those people whose mobile phones pinged in the same area about the same time as Sam's phone. I wish they wouldn't use the surnames. Oh my God, what is wrong with these bloody mainstream media people? Can't use Samantha's name and calling her Murphy. You know, it drives me mad if you've watched any of my videos. Anyway, this is poor Sam. This was the morning that she disappeared, the last photo of her. So it's interesting. So now this is the mobile data of other people. So not just Sam. So, they haven't found Sam's phone. They have not found her Apple Watch. Look, you can see it here. But they have, I think, been able to get data. And I think that's how they found, what had happened to her and came to arrest Patrick. So it's what they call a tower dump of determining what other electronic equipment was bouncing off these towers. Former Victoria Police homicide detective Charlie Bezina told 7 News, and technology expert Val Quinn said movement could also be potentially tracked using the phone data. So this gives police a lot more information to investigate who might have been associated in the area with her. So Missing Persons Squad investigators have been sifting through and assessing more than 12,000 hours of security vision and 770 individual pieces of information. It's an enormous task. When you have nothing else, you've got to throw the net quite large, Bezina said, which is true. So, gosh, it's going to just take hours and hours, isn't it, to get through all those things. Having said that, some information somewhere along the line that they got led them to arrest Patrick. So Sam was captured on CCTV leaving her home on Eureka Street at 7 a.m. on Sunday, February the 4th. It was Ballarat's warmest February day that year, reaching 34.6 centigrade. Sam was set to embark on a, ignore the Murphy, I'm sort of beyond words with this contempt of calling her Murphy. Sam was set to embark on a lengthy run near her home and throughout nearby bushland areas, including the Canadian State Forest, and this was a route she was familiar with. So she was carrying her phone and wearing a smartwatch. About an hour after she left home, she reached the Mount Clear area on foot, around 7 kilometres from her home. And we know that she was in that area due to information police have gathered from her mobile phone data. And that's where her trail goes cold. And that obviously something happened there, because that's where they believe she was murdered, in that area. What happened after that, though, they don't know. So it's unclear where she went after this point, or if something happened to her in this area. Now, I'm presuming like the Apple Watch will show some sort of spike in her, pulse rate or something at that time, and that's why they think, because they do seem very convinced that the murder that they're convinced happened in that Mount Clear area. And it was deliberate and targeted. That's what they're saying. Not a hit and run. They've made it quite clear it wasn't a hit and run. So police searched the Mount Clear area twice, but nothing was found. Her phone and watch remain missing. And when she was reported missing on the 4th of February, they launched an extensive search near her home and in surrounding bushland areas. They also searched areas in the suburb of Bunyinyong, about 14 kilometres away, pinpointing it as a location of interest. And this was because Sam's phone also pinged at that location, but it's unknown what time this occurred. But I do remember in the beginning of this investigation, they said around about 5, didn't they, in the evening. On Friday, February the 23rd, Detective Acting Superintendent Mark Hatt said police were not ruling out the phone ping, despite Bunyinyong being about 6 kilometres south of Mount Clear. Now, the thing that's important to remember is that that's where they are, there's nothing much to report, if you like, no new news in one way. But the other thing to remember is that Bunyinyong, that was very close to where Patrick Stevenson was arrested. Now, he was arrested supposedly house sitting with his girlfriend Meg, very close to that area. So that's probably another reason why they're pinpointing that area. So that's the first bit of news that I've got for you. Now, then we're going to listen to a couple of podcasts that we've not listened to before, that I found as I was sort of searching. Let's have so this guy, Andrew Rule, he has done a podcast, I think, to try and give hope, because he's saying, he's talking about other cases, where people have been found, where things have been, he wants to give a glimmer of hope for the vanished. Andrew Rule, that's one that we're going to listen to. We're also going to listen to another sort of just really a talk about the Samantha Murphy case from the front. I think that might be it for the moment. I'm always looking for podcasts, that we haven't listened to before. Oh, and right, I think I'm going to start though with this, because this was a news story that I came up with as I was searching for news of Samantha Murphy, and I think you might find this interesting. So 4 days ago, there was a bushwalker who was found in the bush after a 2-week search. So, and they knew exactly where he was going to. So it's took them 2 weeks to find this guy. Sorry, I think I'm going to sneeze. So let's have a look at this. So I think this is interesting. I mean, I know they've been looking for Samantha a lot longer than that, but it's just interesting that even this guy, Darren Banks, who's a bushwalker, who, they knew where he was going. It's still taken them 2 weeks to find him. Unfortunately, he was deceased, which is very sad. But I think it's quite telling for how difficult it is to search in these areas.
Good evening. The search for a missing bushwalker has come to a heartbreaking end. The father of two found dead in remote bush southwest of Sydney. Specialist crews had been...
Now, he's a father of two and he's been found dead in remote bush. Now, he likes bushwalking, he's experienced in this. It's not something, didn't just go out for a walk and he's never done it before. But it's funny because he went out for a nighttime walk. Now, if any of you out there are bushwalkers who like, who enjoy going out into the bush, there'll be people who like doing that. You let me know. I mean, I don't know if that's a common thing to go out at night. That just seems, really scary at night time. But I think this is a lit path, a lit trail, but we'll hear what the guy's got to say.
Been searching rugged terrain near Bargo for Darren Banks after he set off on an overnight walk and never came home.
A heartbreaking end to a 13-day mystery. Father of two, Darren Banks, left his Macquarie Fields home almost 2 weeks ago, telling his son he'd be back the next day. He never returned.
Monday was my son's birthday, and I said why he wasn't home. He didn't call.
Oh, his wife. She gets very upset. Just to warn you, he's got two young children. It's anyway, and it was coming up to his son's birthday, and he didn't come home for his son's birthday.
Nothing. I said, why nothing?
The 57-year-old set off on an overnight hike on March 15, leaving his car at the start of the Starlights Trail near Balmoral, heading towards the Needle Lookout. When he failed to return, his wife raised the alarm, sparking a large search and rescue operation.
It's a rugged bushland if you go.
So if there's any of you out there who do like, I have a lot of Australian viewers now because of this case. Is that something that people would commonly do, go out at night? Just seems very dangerous to me, but the name of the trail, the Starlight Trail, sort of suggests that it is a nighttime trail. But yeah, it's intriguing.
Go off the trail, then the terrain is very difficult.
Darren was an experienced bushwalker and knew the area well.
He had limited supplies. Maybe they could have lasted a few days, yes, but certainly not 2 weeks.
Police believe the father may have suffered a medical episode or misadventure. His family now left to come to terms with the fact he'll never be coming home.
I mean, how awful, isn't it? So they said a medical episode or misadventure. So I suppose there will now be an autopsy to see his cause of death. Of course, very dangerous to go out at night alone as well, because if you had a heart attack, if you tripped up, if you I don't know how hot it is at night, maybe you went out at night because it's less hot, but there's just so many things that could go wrong, isn't there? So many things. It's just so silly to go out on your own, man or woman. He wouldn't be worried about the same things that maybe women are worried about. But, you can't think you're invincible just because you're a man either, and if he wasn't attacked, he could easily have tripped up, had a heart attack, fainted. Anything could have happened. So, going out on your own is not a good idea, is it? To go out on your own. You should always really go out there with somebody else.
I was very depressed and cry a lot, but now I just try to be calm and strong because my kids, I need to look after them.
A marathon rescue mission has tonight turned into a delicate recovery operation as searchers try to retrieve his body to prepare a report for the coroner. Bill Hogan, 7 News.
And that was interesting choice of language. They said they tried to recover his body. Is it a problem in recovering his body then? I suppose if it's a remote area, they've got to get the body onto a stretcher, get it to something to transport him, so awful, really. So very sad news, but I could see I could relate to that, so there's a guy who'd gone off, I presume they found him the same way, did they, by following his phone? Or anyway, they found him in the end, but it's taken them to even knowing where he went. It's taken them 2 weeks to find him, and I'm presuming he wasn't hidden, unless he was attacked. We don't know, to be honest. He could have been attacked, couldn't he? So that's just caught my eye, that story, and made me think of Sam's case and how difficult it is. We always think that people will find bodies quickly, the authorities. We've seen it a lot in rivers, haven't we, lately, in water. You think, oh, why can't they just find them? But so tricky. And the bush, of course, is like your land version of rivers and water, because it's not easy to find bodies in the bush. And what will happen is, not to be grisly, but it's the truth. Animals can disturb bodies, and it just doesn't even bear thinking about. And the longer it goes, that body's not recovered, of course, sort of the trickier it is, in a way, isn't it? So very sad. My heart goes out to his family, especially his children. And as far as he's concerned, rest in peace, and hopefully he's wandering through the bush in a nicer place where maybe bad things don't happen to you. Anyway, so I wanted to tell you about that. So let's go to the podcast now. I think we'll start with this, the front one, it's called. Now, I've listened to the beginnings of these, but I haven't listened to all of it. So we're listening to it together. Let me see. Where's the play? Play? Where's play? Can't find play. Helps if you press play, but there it is. So the description is a 22-year-old man is in custody.
Workday brings finance and HR together to help your organisation thrive.
Charged with murdering Victorian mum Samantha Murphy, now the hunt for her body and for answers about this baffling crime. So yeah, this is just the start of this case. So although they've got the guy in custody, everybody wants to know, why did he do it? How did he do it? Where is she? There's so many unanswered questions.
That means you can manage everything from full Fortune 500 companies.
Active to Priceline. Exclusions apply. Offer.
Sorry.
You can listen to The Front on your smart speaker every morning. To hear the latest episode, just say play.
On the Front, I'm Claire Harvey. It's Friday, March 8. Sam Kerr might have called a policeman. White Star is fighting a charge in London's courts over an Kerr's accused of calling the cop going up, and it's all about how solar panel your bill. Subscribe at Centre Chill through every Australian. The Front's Matthew Condon has that story.
The Australian bush. It has forever lurked not just at the edges of our towns and cities, but our collective subconscious. A place of almost indescribable beauty, and at the same time, a black hole, a moor, a haunted landscape that, in the blink of an eye, can snatch us away without a trace. It is a place where ghosts lurk, boogeymen, monsters, and for centuries, it has become almost mythical in our literature, art, and films.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the bush, it's like, as if you don't live in Australia, it's difficult to sort of imagine it. I mean, of course, the bush will be, for the original Australians, the Aborigines, etc., they probably understood it a lot more than later people coming along did. Because your culture, your whole culture of a society is sort of woven together with the canvas of the environment that you live in. So the bush will have always been, at the heart of the Aboriginal culture, and now sort of, it's like if you're living in a city and you've got literally, like as Samantha did, you've got the bush right on your doorstep there, and she was going out running in there, and I think we've got to be careful, because we sort of talk about, oh, she went running in the bush. It wasn't the bush like, thick bushland. I mean, there were trails, there were roads, it was, not roads, but, trails to run on. People go walking there. It wasn't a place, that nobody ever went to. So I think it's important to remember that. But it's funny when they took the way this guy's talking about the bush now, and it's almost this mystical, because it's part of Australian culture, isn't it? And it's like it's sort of be attractive and scary at the same time.
Fear is manifested in the psychopath at the heart of Wolf Creek. It's the omniscient villain in the latest Eric Bana movie, Force of Nature. And it's most hauntingly embodied in the classic 1975 film, Picnic at Hanging Rock. The Panpipes theme by George Zamfir.
Yeah, now it's important. Stop. Stop. Sorry, I have to bang the book on the table because otherwise she'll keep on barking. Okay, so yeah, this film, Wolf Creek, which is based on the serial killer Ivan Milat, who was Australia's most notorious serial killer, who killed a lot of people in the bushlands. This is sort of resonates with people, and the Picnic at Hanging Rock, which is supposed to be loosely based on a real story. There's all these sort of, so that film Wolf Creek with Eric Bana, that was, in fact, I haven't seen that. I must watch that film, because I bet it's a really good film. But they create this sort of image, of the bush as being a dangerous place. But of course, it's not necessarily a dangerous place, and not in these parts that are not, where Samantha went missing. It wasn't deep in the bush. They're supposed to be safe, but evidently they're not.
Is enough to send a chill down Australians' spines. And this anxiety gripped us all over again when Ballarat mother of three, Samantha Murphy, 51, seemingly vanished into thin air after she took off for a routine early morning jog into the bush near her home in early February. For a month, we followed every detail of the search for Sam. The police and volunteers scouring the bush near her home. These vast tracts of land outside the old goldfield town with names like the Wu Wukurung Regional Park and Mount Clear. We witnessed the tears of the family, the broken heart of her daughter, Jess.
I think that Jess just, that press conference that Jess and Mick gave Jess more than Mick, and I suppose Mick was trying to be strong for Jess. Jess was just so upset. I think that touched everyone, didn't it? So, not only in Australia, not only in Ballarat, not only in Victoria, not only in Australia, but all over the world, people were, fixated with this and wanted to, because initially we did not know that there was anything suspicious. Everybody hoped that although Samantha had gone missing, there was a reason, maybe she tripped and fallen, maybe she was unconscious somewhere in the bush, or there were lots of things people were hanging on, weren't they, to hope, until finally the police just out of nowhere, incidentally, because the police were saying for a long time there was no suspicious circumstances, and then just suddenly it all changed. And I think everybody was heartbroken for Jess and for the other kids, which of course, you know, we haven't seen them speak because they're very young children. The other two children are very, very young. So it's very heartbreaking. And for all of us, you know, we can feel that empathy towards Jess and the rest of the family. And everybody wanted it to have a different outcome, didn't they? Everybody wanted it to be a case of her just tripping over or, you know, some medical episode, but it wasn't to be.
Just on behalf of my dad and myself and my siblings, I'd just really like to thank our family and friends for just their continuous love and support. It's really helping us to get through and to keep us strong and to keep us motivated to keep looking and keep moving forward. Mum's a really strong woman and she's far too determined to give up this fight. I know she's out there somewhere.
As each night fell, we sensed with dread that Samantha was out there in the dark. Was she yet another of that long line of Australians lost to the bush? Then suddenly, the answer.
Detectives from the Missing Persons Squad yesterday morning at 6 a.m. arrested a 22-year-old Scots.
So this is the press conference that Shane, the police chief, gave when they arrested right out of the blue. To be honest, this did come completely out of the blue, but you know, I think by the point that this happened, so every day that passed that Samantha was not found, it was starting to look, although we were all trying to keep hope, it was starting to look worse and worse, wasn't it? And then suddenly, out of the blue, Patrick was arrested.
Man, they arrested him at his home address and took him into custody. The man was interviewed over a number of hours. A number of search warrants have been executed. As a result of those investigations, he has today been charged with the murder of Samantha.
At a press conference on Thursday, the Chief Commissioner of the Victorian Police, Shane Patton, delivered the news the nation had been dreading.
We will be alleging that murder occurred at Mount Clare on the day she disappeared. In the interview with the suspect, he has not disclosed to police where Samantha's body is. I want to be very clear. I'm limited in what I can say, given that there has now been a charge of murder laid.
Last week on The Front, we brought you a very different kind of police press conference, fronted in Sydney by homicide detectives and the New South Wales Police Commissioner. In that instance, police had obtained the cooperation of the suspect, serving policeman Beau Lamar Condon, and alleged the suspect had told them where to find the bodies.
Yeah, that was a case that I covered as well, about the Australian TV presenter and his partner were killed by the policeman, Beau Lamar, I think his name is, as he just said. Finally, he did give up where the bodies were, and the police were able to go out and bring those bodies home to those boys, those men, bring them home to their family, which this is what has been denied to Samantha's family. And it seems like Patrick will not cooperate. He's just a complete twonk he's just making everything worse. I can't even start talking about it because it just upsets me so much. Not only is taking this mother away from her children and away this wife away from her husband, you know, he won't say where she is. So they have to deal every day with the knowledge that she's just out there somewhere in the bush. It's horrible. That's the most horrible thing, to be honest. He's still offending in my eyes. He made the offence of murdering Samantha for whatever reason, and of course we don't know the circumstances yet. But every day that he does not say where Samantha is, is, he is still offending in my eyes, and it should. Now, of course, he's got to be found guilty yet, but I can pretty much guess that the police will not have arrested him and charged him with murder without a very good case, even without the body. So when it does come to it, if he's found guilty, he should be given extra time for this, for not saying where the body is. But then we looked at another case, didn't we, where someone was rewarded, someone in Ballarat, rewarded for not saying where the body was, because by the time they found the body, they could not establish cause of death. And this makes me wonder, is this why he's doing it? Is he then going to come out with a story that it was just an accident, manslaughter, and hoping that by then they won't be able to establish that in fact he murdered her? Is this what's behind it all? Because that other person that we're talking about, they hardly got any sentence. They were charged with manslaughter. They got about 10 years, I think, in the end. Is that what he's doing? Is that what he's hoping for? What a twonk.
Of murdered couple Jessie Baird and Luke Davies. The level of detail New South Wales Police divulged about that matter was extraordinary, surprising even veteran crime reporters. In this matter, Shane Patton batted away almost every question about detail, eventually making this pointed remark.
Again, I'm not going to go into the evidence and speculate about the evidence. In Victoria, when someone's charged, irrespective of what people's views may be, the details of that evidence are tested in court, not at press conferences.
For the past 33 days, the Australian's reporters have been in Ballarat trying to talk to Samantha Murphy's family and everyone else in a town gone wild with frustration and suspicion.
There was no apparent reason for Samantha Murphy, a 51-year-old mother who loved her 3 children, who lived in a comfortable house in East Ballarat, to disappear.
Damon Johnston is the Australian's Victorian editor.
The circumstances of her last appearance were that she left the family home shortly after 7 a.m. on Sunday, February 4, dressed in her jogging gear. This is something she did a lot. So ostensibly, she appears to have been very much your quintessential Aussie mum, raising her kids, raising a family and staying fit. The inexplicable nature of her disappearance, the fact that there was no body found despite all the police searches, I think has led to what is ultimately a tragedy, also being a mystery that's captivated the nation.
It's been 34 days since Samantha Murphy was last seen.
34 days, over a month, and that family's still waiting for answers. And yeah, there will be lots of speculation. And, although we understand why Shane is saying, things get tried in a court of law, not in press conferences, and he's right, but unfortunately then there is going to be speculation. There's no point in saying, oh, don't speculate. This is what people, of course, are going to speculate if they don't know what's happened. They've become invested in Samantha's story. They care about about her getting found and being brought back to her family. People are feeling empathy for her family. So it's not through badness that people are speculating most of the time. I know there's been speculation about Mick, but most of that was engendered by the mainstream media, who kept showing these photos of him smiling, or any photo, they take any photo that they could take where he looked like he wasn't acting as he should be in their eyes, and blast it all over the social media. So that gets picked up by people. Blast it all over the mainstream media. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and it's not the police's fault in a way, because of course I understand why they don't want to give out information, but some things maybe they could confirm or deny, or maybe they can't. At the end of the day, you just got to hope that they're building a case. But the main thing is, where is Samantha? We want, please, please let Samantha be brought home.
That gap has prompted questions about whether the police were moving fast enough.
I'm sure there was a lot of action going on below the waterline, so to speak, over the last 33 days.
Definitely.
That said, the initial messaging from Victoria Police was somewhat confusing. It left the perception that they weren't treating it seriously enough in that first few days or maybe that first week.
No.
Now, clearly that's changed over the last 2 to 3 weeks where they've deployed.
I don't think the police ever looked like they weren't taking it seriously. I totally disagree with him on that. I think right from the beginning you felt that they were taking it seriously. It's just that, you know, at the end of the day, they didn't. I think they probably weren't thinking straight from the beginning that they were suspicious circumstances. They were definitely thinking there would have been some sort of medical episode or she tripped over and they would find her. That first week until they brought in the missing persons people, that's what that would have been what their working hypothesis was, wasn't it? That there was no foul play, but something you know, it happened to Sam, and I'm sure they were hoping to recover her as well. Now, it all changed when the missing persons unit came in on the following Friday. So between Sunday, when she went missing, and the Friday, they were intensely searching for Sam. So I don't believe that they weren't taking it seriously. But it all changed when the missing person unit came in. Then they stopped the search. So obviously by then some data had come through that led them to believe they stopped searching because they knew she wasn't there. They didn't stop searching thinking she was still there in the area close to her home. They stopped searching because they knew she was not there by then. They knew that something had happened at Mount Clear.
They're expert investigators. The language that Victoria Police has used has changed. And 2 weeks ago, they tragically announced that they were looking for a body and that they believed that her remains had been removed by one or more people. So the police approach to this did escalate.
Yeah, that was a strange thing because they did say one or more people. They were, you know, instead of just saying that her body, you know, that something had happened to her at the hands of someone, they specifically said more than one person. It's quite odd, that, I think.
In public, and I think it would be premature to judge the police too harshly because we now have a charge laid. We'll wait for the courts to determine the fate of that charge, but we just...
What is he talking about? Why would you judge the police harshly? They've got someone in custody. They've charged them with murder. They haven't found the body, but, you know, they're trying to find the body. How can he? I would never. I don't know what he's talking about, this guy, to say you can't judge them too harshly. Who would even think of that?
Need more information before we assess the police investigation, I think.
During that long wait for information, detectives repeatedly asked for Victorians to stop unhelpful speculation about the case, particularly about their theories on who might have taken Samantha.
The vacuum has been filled with speculation and online gossip. Ballarat's a town of about 120,000 people, so it's big, but not that big. The Murphys were a high-profile couple. They ran a successful panel beating business. And on one hand, it's only human nature for people to speculate. But now, obviously, with modern technology, it enables that to go like wildfire.
Coming up, what we know about motive and method.
Now, it's true, you know, speculation has always gone on about crimes, but now, as we know, it's different. You know, messages just in an instant go across, you know, international boundaries.
In the alleged murder of Samantha Murphy. While I've got you, as this story develops, The Australian subscribers will be the first to know. Join us at theaustralian.com.au for the best reporting and analysis, live updates direct to your phone, newsletters and special events. Check us out at theaustralian.com.au and we'll be back after this break.
I just fast forward that.
You're able to accelerate
What is the first rule of Mumcast? Because we wanted to create a mother's group for your ears. Come and join us.
Samantha Murphy's family found out about the arrest on Wednesday night. On Thursday, just before they spoke to the media, police told the family they'd charged the man with murder. That should have caused some pause for those who'd speculated about family members' knowledge or involvement. Shane Patton again made it clear the family was not under suspicion and said police believe the man in custody is not known to the family at all.
Samantha's family has been advised of this tragic news this afternoon by detectives from the Missing Persons Squad, and obviously this is a tragic outcome, knowing that she has been murdered. Our thoughts and support are with her family. And I do just want to say something about the family. Since the outset in these cases, it's often that the family come under scrutiny. They have been cooperative with us. They have provided everything we needed, and they have had no involvement whatsoever in this matter.
Asked if he was...
Now, the police, they were specific in saying that. So, they've said that for a reason. So they've got no involvement. And there is still speculation about the family. But, it's not good because the police have people like to bash the police, but at the end of the day, the police are the ones dealing with this. The police are the ones that have to bring this to court. The police are the ones that have to, if they don't get a successful prosecution, everyone will be up in arms saying, oh my God, it's all the police's fault. So, the police is in their interest to sort this out properly. So, and I take Shane at his words. If he says the family's not involved, then the family are not involved in my eyes.
Known to Samantha Murphy, Patton said this.
I don't have that knowledge. I don't believe that to be the case.
The man, whose name was suppressed by the court, appeared before Ballarat Magistrates Court and police opposed bail. He has not yet been required to enter a plea and has not been convicted of anything.
No, and also they have now revealed his name as Patrick Stevenson. So what happened was he appeared in court, they revealed his name, then there was a big kerfuffle about that, so the judge put a gagging order on his name, but everybody knew his name already anyway, and then his lawyer had agreed, through his lawyer, Patrick agreed for his name to be released, probably to protect his family. I don't know what the reason was. So this must have been recorded before that.
Police haven't yet disclosed an alleged motive or...
Which really seems, I'm surprised, because it literally was from night to day. The name was out there, then it wasn't out there, then it was out there. It literally happened within a few hours. So I'm surprised that's not been mentioned on this podcast.
Method for Samantha's death. They won't say if there was a sexual element to the crime, only that they believe she died in Mount Clear, a suburb on Ballarat's outskirts. The nation has suffered a string of shocking crimes already this year. A mother and child, then the father, were stabbed to death in Sydney, allegedly by a martial arts instructor known to the family.
Yeah, now I did cover that case. That was, they were Korean born, were they? Or anyway, the martial arts instructor that was teaching the young boy martial arts, when the mother went to pick up the young boy from his class, he murdered the young boy and the mother. He then drove the mother's car to her house and murdered the father. So, something was going on there. I did do a video on that a couple of weeks ago. I just wanted to say that this was published, apparently, according to this, on the 7th of March. So why it doesn't include the fact that the name of Patrick Stevenson was released is unclear.
The murders of Jessie Baird and Luke Davies on the eve of Mardi Gras devastated Sydney's LGBTI community. Now the search for Samantha Murphy's remains, somewhere out there in that haunted landscape.
Thanks for joining us on The Front this week.
Okay, so that's that podcast. It was interesting. I still don't really understand why didn't, it seemed to be sort of like made ages ago and it hasn't been updated. But anyway. Okay, so we've got one more podcast to listen to. Again, I haven't, sorry, not that one. I haven't listened to this yet. So we'll be listening to this for the first time together.
Hey, it's Brooke Blurton and Maddie Mills. And yeah, we like to break stigmas on our show. But this next...
Around the backtracks, which led away from the property, the fairly lush and beautiful...
Hey, it's Brooke Blurton and Maddie Mills. And yeah, we like to break stigmas on our show. But this next one shouldn't still have the stigma. Like, surely it's time we can talk about sexually transmitted infections openly.
Yeah, STIs are so common that 1 in 6 Aussies will get them. But you can reduce the risk by using protection, booking regular checkups, and tuning into a dedicated app of our podcast.
One of the things that the police have done is to appeal to people for dash cam footage, for security camera footage, for any sort of record to show when and where Mrs. Murphy might have gone running in a particular spot, so that they could then, if they had such proof, such footage, they could then plot a course and say, well, she's run this way and then she's turned here and run that way. But interestingly, over the time, over 20 days, no one of all the hundreds and hundreds of locals who are fascinated by this and are clearly keen to help, none of them have been able to produce dash cam footage or security camera footage which shows Mrs. Murphy jogging on any particular path away from her house at Ballarat East. At this point, as we record this, police have ramped up their interest in this case. Homicide detectives are going to Ballarat to have a good hard look at it. We understand, and it will be interesting to see what transpires. But let's make some general observation. No one wants to spell out the bitter truth, aloud anyway, that when people vanish for more than a few days, unless they are voluntary runaways with well-laid plans, the odds against their return grow longer with every hour. The reality of modern life, and by modern life I mean life, basically post-COVID, modern 2024, is that anyone not actually under deep cover.
So he said 28 days, didn't he, that she'd been missing. So it seems like this podcast was made when she was...
Hey, it's Brooke Blurton and Maddie...
All that stuff, secret caches of cash, so that they can slip under the radar. But ordinary citizens like Samantha Murphy or most of us, it doesn't happen like that for them. They haven't got the time, the money, the resources, and really the knowledge, the instincts, or the impetus to do what professional spies and organised crime can do. For the investigators who are now trying to trace a regular wife and mother like Sam Murphy, the most ominous sign is not necessarily a drop of blood, but the complete absence of a bank transaction. Even a decade ago, not that long, there were fewer cameras, especially dash cams, and home security units that people have now in most homes and shops. Most of us, even a decade ago, were more inclined to use cash than we are now. After the mass switch to cashless transactions during the COVID pandemic, In the Murphy case, the case of Ballarat East, the appalling silence leaves nothing but the desperate hopes and blind faith of the broken-hearted people who love her. Those who know Samantha Kelly best describe a devoted mother who wouldn't willingly leave her kids for 3 days, let alone
Samantha Kelly? Who's he talking about?
3 weeks. As the days have passed, the chances of finding her alive have shrunk almost to nothing.
Oh, this guy's really annoying me. Not only he referred to her as Murphy earlier, now he's referring to her as Samantha Kelly. Doesn't even remember her name. Where's your respect, man?
But the absence of a body or signs of obvious violence inevitably sustain a glimmer of hope. And that's not always a good thing. That is why dedicated detectives see their job in missing persons cases is often to extinguish hope, as they did so well in the 2020 Wollongata campus investigation by eventually uncovering the remains of the two campers, Russell Hill and Carol Clay. The investigators didn't just arrest a prime suspect, a man who will stand trial at some point, but through doggedness and I would suggest technical brilliance, they were able to extinguish all hope among the relatives and loved ones of the two missing people by finding the remains of those people so that the families...
I don't think I like this guy at all. But anyway, let's see the rest of it. But what? I'm a bit flabbergasted, really.
know what happened to them, where it happened to them, and were able to recover what was left of them and give them what we used to call a decent burial so that they've got an end point
Well, what do you call
and
it
somewhere
now?
to grieve and something to grieve over. This matters so much to people. And I have to say that in all these decades of all these sad stories that I've covered for a long time, the worst of them have been to talk to the parents of, particularly mothers, the parents of children that have vanished and have never been found, because that is a terrible, terrible ordeal for people because they're never dead sure that their child isn't alive somewhere. They have to keep that tiny flame of hope alive, and yet that is the thing that actually sends them mad with grief, because the reality is that the child, if they've been missing for years, is not alive. Except, of course, in the extremely rare cases where they are. It's a barely feasible scenario, but it can happen that a missing person just might be alive somewhere after being abducted by a deranged kidnapper. It is the faintest of chances, but we can't always dismiss it. It's happened in rare...
Has he made this while she was still missing? This is something associated with the Herald Sun, which is a horrible publication, I think. They're the ones that hide everything behind a paywall. Probably picked me up for copyright for this.
Rare and bizarre cases in Europe and in America. I think most of us will recall that case. I think it was the Fritzl case in Austria, where a quite intelligent and well-organised man, but clearly a sexual psychopath, had abducted his own daughter, who was 18 or so, and locked her up in a pre-prepared dungeon under his house in Lower Austria, and kept her in this dungeon with a television and a microwave and a hot plate for 24 years, during which time he repeatedly raped her, and she had several children as the product of these sexual assaults. And eventually, after 24 years, when the daughter was something like 42 years old, somehow she was able to raise the alarm and escape. And this terrible story.
She did not escape. She did not. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I know more about true crime than him. Joseph Fritzl, what happened in the end is one of his children and his daughter's children was ill, and she persuaded him. Because they were worried that the child was going to die. And that's why she didn't escape. He brought her out and they went to the hospital with this child that was ill. That's how it all came about. So this guy hasn't got a clue what he's talking about. I know more about true crime than this guy.
Was made public to an appalled world. So it did happen in Austria. We've seen similar stories in America. I can recall one where a man snatched an 11-year-old girl off the street in California. She vanished off the face of the earth. Her parents, her family, everyone assumed she was dead, as you would. In fact,
I think this is Elizabeth Smart he's talking about, but I'm not sure.
What happened was he kept her sort of locked up in lean-tos at the back of his house. Somehow his wife was in on a terrible secret. The wife must have been totally brainwashed by this domineering psychopath. That little girl survived. She had children by that monster, fathered by that man.
Oh, maybe not.
And years later, someone somewhere realised that this man had appeared at some legal proceeding, and someone put two and two together and realised the truth, and they were able to unravel this terrible case and bring home a young woman who had been abducted off the street many years earlier. She'd been abducted at 11, and I don't think she saw her family again until she was in her 30s. It was a shocking, shocking case. So now and again around the world, we see what we would call a black swan case. This is the exceptions that prove the rule. Usually the vanished are dead, but occasionally they're not.
What is the first rule of Mum Club?
Don't stay on your phone at the park.
Absolutely not.
I think he was referring to Elizabeth Smart there. Let's just get through the adverts.
In the Cleo Smith case, the first thing the police had to do, of course, was to clear.
Cleo Smith was a little girl who went missing, and she was found.
The man closest to Cleo's family, and that was her stepfather. Nice enough young bloke, but he would have to be cleared immediately. And they talked to him robustly and they cleared him. Now, they then searched very carefully the campsite area and decided that she wasn't there. And then they spread the net wider. But in the end, it was dumb luck that she'd been abducted by a weirdo who was not a homicidal weirdo. This weirdo wanted to keep the little girl the way that he kept dolls. He used to keep dolls.
Just to say, I don't think that was Elizabeth Smart he was talking about. It must be another one, because Elizabeth Smart did not have children with her abductor. But anyway, one day I'll do a video about Elizabeth Smart. It's a very, very positive story, really, because it is a story of survival. And Elizabeth Smart was kidnapped and kept captive and hit. I don't know if that's what he meant, but he's got the story wrong, because his wife did know about it. But anyway, one day I'll do a video about that. She is safe now, and she is an advocate for missing people and for girls and women.
Who knows how it would have ended up, but what actually happened was an alert shopkeeper in Carnarvon realised that this disturbed young man, who was deeply weird and strange, was buying toddlers' nappies, disposable nappies, and put two and two together and said, that's a bit weird. Why is he buying nappies? And contact.
Well, I don't know if that's what actually happened, because I don't trust this man now, because he wasn't true what you said about Joseph Fritzl's daughter. So maybe that was, again, this is on my list of many videos I'd like to do, about this case, the Cleo Smith case. Luckily, the guy was obsessed with dolls. He was keeping Cleo like a doll. But whether that would eventually have led to anything. But yeah, well done that shopkeeper for noticing that he was buying nappies and he knew he didn't have any children.
The police then went around, knocked on the door, and there she was. 18 days later, alive and fairly well, sitting on the floor watching cartoons on television. So miracles can happen, but not often. Here's another one. Older listeners might recall the unbelievable case of a Queensland schoolgirl called Natasha Ann Ryan. Now, when Natasha, or Tash as they called her, was 14, she went missing after her mother dropped her at school in Rockhampton on August the 31st back in 1998. Queensland police, probably not the sharpest tools in the shed, some of them, particularly not at Rockhampton apparently. They assumed initially that Natasha's 15-year-old friend, a girl called Maya.
But did he really say that the police aren't the sharpest tacks in the... Oh, my God. Anyway, I'm just looking up about this case because I don't trust what he said.
Tour had killed her. Well, apparently that wasn't right. Then the police switched blame to a far more likely candidate, a serial sex killer called Leonard Fraser, who was believed responsible for several abduction murders in that part of Queensland, and in fact, around this time was locked up for a terrible murder of a 9-year-old girl. It seems so hugely likely that Natasha was dead that her family held a memorial service for her in Bundaberg to mark her 17th birthday in May 2001. So this is almost 3 years after she's gone missing. The 17th birthday, the family gather, they have a memorial service, essentially like a funeral. But strange things happen sometimes. It wasn't until Leonard Fraser was standing trial in 2003, standing trial for the murder of Natasha Ryan, among others, that the astounding truth emerged. Now, it must be that the media coverage of that trial, of Leonard Fraser's trial, must have prompted someone somewhere to tell the truth, because the truth was that Natasha Ryan wasn't dead. And somebody knew that, because when there was a lot of news coverage about the trial of this alleged murderer, Leonard Fraser, an anonymous person wrote to the police, the Queensland police, saying, Natasha Ryan isn't dead. She's living at this address in Rockhampton with her old boyfriend. And so on the morning of April the 11th, 2003,
there's another video that needs making, and it's true what he said. So the guy that was on trial was a serial killer, and one of the people he was on trial for the murder of was her. And then somebody wrote an anonymous letter, someone who knew that she was alive. She was living in the cupboard at her boyfriend's house. Not living in the cupboard all the time, but she would be in the cupboard whenever anybody else came round. So Paul Leonard, I'm saying Paul Leonard, I think he was a serial killer anyway, but this was not one of his victims.
Trial prosecutor in the murder trial of Leonard Fraser dropped an absolute bombshell. He stood up and he said, last night, police found Natasha Ryan after a tip-off that she was living in this address in Rockhampton with her boyfriend, Scott Black. Now, it turns out that the police have, got the note, they got the address, they got the phone number from the tip-off, not through their own, investigations or anything useful like that. They've gone around, knocked on the door, and it's presumably been answered by Scott Black, who by this stage he'd been in his mid-20s. He was around 21, 22 when he hooked up with Natasha Ryan when she was 14. He was a milkman and apparently not the worst bloke in the world, just a, average milkman in northern Queensland. The police didn't take him at his word that she wasn't home and he didn't know what they were talking about and, why were they bothering him. They looked behind things and they opened a wardrobe and there she was, Natasha Ryan, by this stage nearly 19, squashed up in the wardrobe, keeping a very low profile. And they said, Natasha Ryan, come out and talk to us. So she did. And so after almost 5 years, this is 4 years and 8 months, 14-year-old schoolgirl is now living as, the wife of Scott Black, her longtime boyfriend, in secret, in the very town where she'd gone missing. They had moved once. They'd moved outside Rockhampton, but they'd moved back. And she managed to get away with this merely by drawing the curtains. And if somebody visited, on the rare occasions they did, she would hide. But otherwise, if she wanted to go for a walk or go to the beach or whatever, she'd do it in the dark. They'd do stuff in the dark. Go and have a
It's amazing, really, isn't it? I wonder who it was that wrote that anonymous letter, to say that she was there. Because if somebody wouldn't have wrote, obviously somebody close to them, because nobody else would have known. So I don't think this has got anything to do with the Samantha Murphy case, by the way. I think he's gone completely off track, but it is interesting. I wonder who wrote that letter. Anyway, since then they have married, this couple, and they sold their story to like the equivalent of sort of Hello magazine type thing. So, they did get, obviously they got prosecuted for wasting police time, etc. But anyway, let's see if he says what he's.
Swim in the dark, just keep a low profile. And obviously someone knew this, possibly one of Scott Black's, the milkman's friends or relatives must have known, because when the murder trial came up, it was just too much for this unknown tip-off person to stomach that a man was standing trial for the murder of a woman that was alive. Although Leonard Fraser, let me say, was a very bad man who'd killed several people, so it's not as if he was innocent in any way. He was just innocent of the Ryan murder. You'd have to say it wasn't the Queensland Police's finest hour. It's not as if they found her themselves. They were told where to look. Any random search of Scott Black's homes from September 98 until this day in 2003 would have found the schoolgirl that had eloped with him. There was also the embarrassing fact that the same police had elicited a murder confession from Leonard Fraser, a murder confession about Natasha Ryan, somebody he didn't kill, someone who was still alive.
I know, and I was just reading there that apparently she had to give evidence at the trial. So she gave evidence at the trial for her murder, if you like. It's quite a bizarre story, isn't it? But of course, Leonard Fraser, he had murdered other people, so we can't feel too sorry for him. But he actually had not murdered her, obviously.
And this murder confession was complete with a map of where he'd allegedly dumped her body. All of it clearly bogus, obviously. Now, interestingly, this wasn't a great problem for the judge in the trial, Leonard Fraser's trial. He just told the jury that they ignore that bit. Obviously, Miss Ryan was still alive. Obviously, therefore, the accused had not murdered Miss Ryan. But meanwhile, he probably killed that one, and that one. There were 3 other victims, murder victims. And so the trial proceeded, and Leonard Fraser was convicted of, I think, 2 counts of murder and 1 of manslaughter, and placed in jail for basically the rest of his life, which wasn't long because he died in 2007 and not a minute too soon, I would suggest, because he was no good. It meant that Natasha Ryan was called to give evidence at what had been, until then, the trial of her own supposed killer. She told the court she had never met Leonard Fraser, nor the witness who had sworn on oath seeing her with or near Fraser before she went missing. So that's an interesting one for the police and the prosecutor, really. As women's magazine readers and television current affairs show fans will recall, Natasha Ryan went on to marry her beau, her milkman, in 2008, and they had 3 children. And as far as I know, they're still together. One reason for the wedding to be put on hold so long was that in 2005, Scott Black, the boyfriend, Scott Angus Black, paid the price for telling porkies to the police by serving 1 year of a possible 3-year jail sentence for, I think, perjury or similar.
Yeah.
To be fair to Scott Black, suggestions that he'd brainwashed or manipulated his teenage lover never held water. She cried in court when he was sentenced to jail. She waited for him to come home from jail, and they appear to have lived as happily ever after as most people, and better than some. Natasha and Scott were fined modest amounts for the life.
Yes, but the thing is, she was 14 all the same. I mean, yeah, they have stood the test of time. They're still together. But at the end of the day, he was an adult and she wasn't. So, Andrew, that is the point there.
As they'd told, and the grief they'd caused to Natasha's parents. They used six-figure payments from magazines and television production companies for exclusives to set themselves up while Natasha studied to be a nurse. It was, though, the rarest of happy endings. Just one among so many.
You know, some of these examples of you, that is nothing like the Samantha Murphy case, because, you know, it's completely different. I know it's interesting, don't get me wrong, it's been interesting, him talking about these other missing person cases that ended up in a positive result. I suppose maybe he's trying to give some hope, I'm not sure, but that was very interesting, that last case. Yeah, and I just was reading up about it. Yeah, they did lots of deals, you know, when they got married with these magazines for exclusivity, for photos, etc. And, you know, over $200,000 just on one shoot. So, yeah, they set themselves up, and it's a bit of it gives you that bit of an icky feeling, doesn't it? Because, yeah, how did her parents feel? Imagine if you thought your daughter was murdered. A serial killer's on trial for the murder of your daughter, and then it turns out she was in a cupboard up the road with the milkman all that time. You'd be bloody fuming, wouldn't you? Fuming. You know, so obviously relieved as well, but you know, unless they knew, maybe her parents knew, maybe it was her parents that sent the letter. So that's an interesting case. So yeah, thank you for that, Andrew. That is interesting.
Bad ones.
What is the first rule of Mum Club?
Don't stay on your phone.
Anyway, so that's it. I hope you found that interesting. I think it was interesting. That is the second podcast that we were listening to. So, yeah, I just wanted to give you a look. So we've got a little bit of an update that the police now seem to have more data, access to more data than they had before. Let's hope that leads to Samantha's body being found, hey? I'll be back at any news about Samantha. I'll be back with a video, of course. Thank you for watching, and remember to live and love kindly, wisely. Don't hide in the wardrobe. And if you're looking for your daughter, if your daughter's gone missing, go around to her boyfriend's and look in the cupboard first of all. It's unbelievable, isn't it, really? Anyway, I'll see you really soon in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you. And please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Leave your DNA on the like button, and see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.